Good morning to all. So in the last class we discussed about the topics, the mobile devices, especially the topics like the PDA, personal digital assistant, and also the pocket PC and such other devices and their users, features, etc. So today we have the another topic, the main topic, which comes under the types of computer, which is the mainframe computer. So basically we divided the computers into three types. First one was the personal computers, second one is the mainframe computer, and third one is the supercomputer. So we already go through the topics which comes under the personal computer. We completed that topic, and today we have the second topic which comes under the types of computers, which is the mainframe computer. So the personal computers, which includes the workstation, desktop PC, netop PC, or the netbook, the laptop PC, tablet PC, and also the mobile devices. So all these categories, all these types, all we can combine all this into the personal computer section. Secondly, we have the mainframe computer. So then we have the supercomputer too. So what is a mainframe computer? The term mainframe computer was created to distinguish the traditional large institutional computer intended to service multiple users from the smaller single user machines. So this is the just a definition to this kind of mainframe computer, in which the term mainframe computer was created to distinguish the traditional large institutional computer intended to service the multiple users from the smaller or the single user machines. And also the mainframe are the computers used mainly by large organizations such as government, banks, and large corporations for critical applications involving bulk data processing such as census, industry, and also the consumer statistics and the enterprise resource planning and the financial transaction processing. And also these computers, which means the mainframe computers, are capable of handling and processing very large amount of data quickly. So this is just an introduction to the topic mainframe computer, in which the use of this kind of mainframe computers and the major functions, and which includes the kind of history of this mainframe computer, in which they are used for the kind of bulk data analyze processing, and also which includes the census, the kind of this enterprise resource planning, financial transaction processing, etc. And it is exclusively used for this kind of large organizations such as government, banks, and large corporations for the critical application including this kind of this bulk data processing. So this is regarding the mainframe computer. I repeat the term, the mainframe computer was created to distinguish the traditional large institutional computer intended to service multiple users from the smaller or the single user machines. And the intention of this kind of the mainframe computers was to exclusively for this kind of large organization, which includes the government, banks, and large corporations for the critical applications, or the especially for the kind of use for the bulk data processing, which for example the census or the kind of this business oriented processing data. So this is regarding the introduction to the mainframe computers. So we have some kind of features of these mainframe computers. So we have 5 major exclusive features for these mainframe computers, and also we have 2 other points, which means that what are the changes or what are the differences between the mainframe and the supercomputers that we are going to focus on. So today we just go through the mainframe computer, the introduction to the mainframe computer, and now we have the major features of the major 5 features of the mainframe computers. So firstly, all the mainframes have the ability to run or host multiple operating systems and thereby operate not as a single computer but as a number of virtual machines. And in this role, a single mainframe can replace the dozens of even hundreds of smaller servers. And also which mainframes, by the kind of these mainframes pioneered with this capability, virtualization, and is also now available on most families of computer systems, though not always to the same degree or level of sophistication. So this is just an important use of this kind of mainframe computer, which means that the kind of these mainframe computers have the ability to run or to host multiple operating systems, and we can use this, we can operate not as a single computer but as a number of virtual machines. So this is the basic differences or the major difference that we should focus on the mainframe computer, which while we comparing to the kind of these personal computers that we discussed earlier. So the mainframe computer is exclusively for this kind of to run the kind of large organization and also to run the kind of multiple operating systems, and thereby operate not as a single computer but as a number of virtual machines. So it can handle a kind of 2 or 3 operating systems simultaneously, which means that we can perform the 3 or the 2 functions of a 2 major functions of a computer in a single use with the help of this mainframe computer. It provides this kind of 2 operating system in a single computer, or 2 or 3 operating system in a single computer. So this is the basic difference between the mainframe computer, and nowadays we have the laptops or the kind of the desktop PC in our day-to-day life. So all these kind of laptops or the desktop PC provides this kind of 2 or 3 multiple operating system, which means that probably the Ubuntu or the Linux which combined with the Windows operating system, in which we can use both the Windows and also the Linux or the Ubuntu operating system in a single computer with the help of changing the BIOS or the changing the installation process. So this is regarding just an introduction, first point regarding the features of this mainframe computer. So secondly, we have the second point, which is a very important point of mainframe, in which the mainframes can add or hot swap system capacity, and not descriptively and granularly, to a level of sophistication usually not found on most servers. So the servers is just different from these kind of mainframes, in which the mainframes have the facility or the important feature in order to add or also to hot swap system capacity, to add or to advance the kind of system capacity in a very powerful manner. The mainframe computers have the capability to add the system capacity, and also the modern mainframes, which is the latest kinds of these mainframes, notably the IBM Z series, the System Z9 and System Z10, which all are the servers, offer 2 levels of virtualization, in which the logical partitions, which means the LPARs, and the LPAR, which means a kind of the logical partition, which helps with the help of the PR or the SM facility, and the virtual machines and via the Z or the VM operating system. So which means that these kind of mainframes can add the system, the capacity of the system, and also it has the capacity of 2 kind of virtualization, 2 levels of it offers 2 kinds of virtualization. One is the logical partition, which is commonly used, and also the kind of this virtual kind of partition, virtual machines. So these are the basic another basic function or the feature of these mainframes. So firstly, we discussed about the major function of this the mainframes, in which it has the capability to run the 2 or 3 operating systems simultaneously, multiple kind of this operating system. Secondly, we discussed about the topic, which is the we can add or we can swap the system capacity, and also it can perform 2 kind of virtualization, in which the logical partition and also the virtual partitions. So the logical partition is the commonly used partition in a a common computer right now, in which we can use the, for example, if a hard disk of a laptop is about 1 TB, 1000 GB, we can divide it into different category, in which for example, for 700 GB for this kind of Microsoft Windows, and the other 300 GB for this Ubuntu or the Linux operating system. This kind of logical partition also can perform, or it can the mainframes are capable of this kind of partition. It is just a broader sense of these partitions. And also we have the virtual machines, in which we can control these mainframes with the help of these virtual machines. So this is the second point of the main feature of this mainframe. Thirdly, we have another feature of this mainframe, in which they are designed to handle very high volume input and output and emphasize throughout the computing. So these kind of mainframe have the capability, they are designed to handle very high volume of input and output, both input and output, in which and emphasize throughout the computing. It means that the use of, while we use the mainframe, it is very easy to use, in which it have the capability to handle a very large amount of the input and output kind of processing data. And also, since the mid-1960s, mainframe designs have included several subsidiary computers called the channels or the peripheral processors, which manage the input or the output devices, leaving the CPU to free to deal only with the high speed memory, which means that there is another slot, another category, another slot in the CPU to handle the kind of input or output operations. And also, it compared to a typical PC, the mainframes commonly have hundreds to thousands of times as much data storage online and can access it much faster. So this is the basic another basic use of feature of this mainframe, in which it can, while we compare to a typical common personal computer, the mainframes commonly have the hundreds to thousands of times as much data storage online and can access it much faster. So here we have another category, so the storage, in which we have the online or the cloud storage capability of these mainframes. So the third feature of this mainframe is basically it can handle the input and output operations simultaneously to a large amount, and also the data or the storage is 100 to 1000 times more than a common desktop or the personal computer. So this is the third point regarding the input and output devices, the performance, the process, and also the storage capability. The fourth point regarding the mainframe computer is that the mainframe computers can return on investment, ROI, like any other computing platform, is dependent on its ability to scale, support the mixed workloads, reduce the labor cost, deliver uninterrupted the service for the critical business applications, and also the several other risk-adjusted cost factors, which means that the return on investment, ROI, which means that it has a kind of this computing platform which is dependent on its ability to scale or support mixed workloads, reduce labor cost, etc. So which means that with the help of this mainframe, we can reduce or we can control the kind of all this kind of investment, especially the ROI, which means the return on investment. It simply means that the kind of cost for producing these kind of computers, with the help of this mainframe, we can it has a ability to scale, the support the mixed workloads, reduce the labor cost, deliver the uninterrupted service for critical use. So this is the another major feature of this mainframe computers. And lastly, we have another important point, which is that the mainframes also have the execution integrity for fault tolerant computing. For example, it means that the execution integrity means the kind of the execution in the process, especially the storage or the kind of partition, whatever it is, it has the capability or the facility to execute the integrity for fault tolerant computing. For example, the Z900, the Z990, and also system Z9 and all these system Z10, all these servers effectively execute these result oriented instructions twice, compare results, arbitrate between any differences, and also then shift workloads in flight to functioning processes, including the spares, without any impact to operating system, application or users. So this means that the kind of the execution which is handled by the mainframe is much greater than all other type of computers. So mainframes means a kind of advanced form of computers in which it can execute the kind of this integrity features for the fault tolerant computing. So for a common kind of this mainframe, it can perform or it can run the results twice, the instruction twice, and compare the results, and also it can arbitrate between the any differences, and also it can shift the workload into in-flight mode, and also to functioning the processes, including the spares, and also without any impact of this kind of operating system, in which it has the capability to execute all the performance, all the programs, all the processes with the help of this mainframes. So these are the basics or the major 5 features of these mainframe computers. Firstly, we discussed about the first feature was to run with the help of this mainframe. It can run, it can perform 2 or more multiple kind of this operating system. Secondly, we discussed about it has the capability to add or swap the system capacity, and also it can offer the 2 level of virtualization, which includes the kind of this logical partition and also the virtual machines. And thirdly, we discussed about the topic which is the kind of input output process, the change of this input output device, in which it can emphasize the performance. It can handle a very large amount of input and output processes, and also while compared to a kind of a normal PC, mainframes commonly have hundreds to thousands of times as much data storage, especially online, which means the servers, and can access it much faster. So it is a very important feature of this mainframe. And fourthly, we discussed about the fourth point was regarding the ROI, which means the return on investment. So the kind of this production of these mainframes, the kind of the operation done by the mainframes, it is very in a very advanced form with the help of this mainframe. Lastly, we discussed about the kind of execution, how the mainframe execute the programs, processes, the data analyze without the help of this operating system, and it can compare the results, arbitrate between any differences, can shift the workloads into in-flight mode, and also the major feature is that without any impact to the operating system, it can run the applications, and basically an advanced form of this execution of programs with the help of these mainframes. So these are the basic 5 major features of the mainframes, which is the second category of these types of computers. So we just discussed the major features of these mainframes. Now we have another topic which comes under the mainframe computers. So it is the major differences from the supercomputers, especially the how the mainframes differ from the supercomputers. So basically we have two basic points for these differences. So first one is, a supercomputer is a computer that is at the front line of current processing capacity, and particularly the speed of calculation, and also the supercomputers are used for scientific and engineering problems, especially the grand challenge problems, and which are limited by processing speed and memory size, while mainframes are used for problems which are limited by data movement in input or output devices, reliability, and for handling multiple business transactions concurrently. So this is the first major difference of mainframes and supercomputers, which means that a supercomputer is a computer which is in the front line of this current processing capacity, then especially the speed of calculation, and the basic use of these supercomputers are for the scientific and engineering purposes, and it is also it have the certain limitation, especially the processing speed and memory size, while we have these kind of these limitations of these supercomputers are the positive side of these the mainframe computers, in which the mainframes are used for problems which are limited by data movement in input or output devices, reliability, and for handling multiple business transactions concurrently. So these are the basic differences between the supercomputers and the mainframe computer, which means that the kind of this input output operation which is just an advanced form, which is a advanced kind of in especially in mainframe computers, while the supercomputers is exclusively for this kind of the scientific and engineering purposes, their calculations, and there is a limitation which is the memory limitation and the calculating limitation, the processing speed which is less than the mainframe computers. So while we have all these features, especially this kind of this input output processing and the memory which is a greater memory than the supercomputers, then the reliability, and they use for the it can be used for handling multiple business transactions. So these are the major highlights of these mainframe computers. Of course, these are the basics or the major differences while we compare to these supercomputers with the mainframe computer. So this is the first difference. Secondly, we have the another difference of these mainframe computers, in which the mainframes are measured in millions of integer operations per second, which means that MIPS, the millions of integer operations per second, and whereas the supercomputers are measured in floating point operations per second, flops. So we discussed this kind of flops, and also the I think the MIPS also in the first topic, the history of computers, different generations of computers. So it means that it is a measurement to for the to calculate the speed of this processing data, or processing speed of these computers. So there is a major difference in these forms of these the measurements, especially in the mainframes it is the MIPS, whereas in the supercomputers it is the flops, FLOPS. So this is the basic difference. And also examples for the integer operations include adjusting the inventory counts, matching names, indexing the tables of data, then and making routine yes or no decisions. Floating point operations are mostly addition, subtraction, and also the multiplication with enough digits of precision to model continuous phenomena such as weather. And also in terms of computational abilities, the supercomputers are more powerful. So in this category, in this difference, which means that the difference in the measurements, here we have a slighter edge to the supercomputers over the mainframe computers, in which it is a better kind of measurement. It gives a kind of a better measurements over the mainframe computers, which is the supercomputers. So this is the basic differences that we should focus on while we going through the topic mainframes and supercomputers. So the first one was regarding their use, especially the major use of these mainframes and the major use of these the supercomputers, and the differences between this use. It is the first difference. Second one was regarding the measurements, which is the for the mainframes it is the millions per second MIPS, and also for supercomputers it is the flops, which means that the floating point operations per second. So this is the flops which is used in this supercomputers is much better than the mainframe. So this is another this is the second major differences between the mainframes and also the supercomputers. So that's it about the major differences between the mainframes and the supercomputers. So we just completed the topic, the mainframe computers. Firstly, we discussed about the topic, the term mainframe computer, what does it mean. It is created to distinguish the traditional large institutional computer intended to service the multiple users from the smaller single user machines. It is the basic definition for these mainframe computers, and also the major 5 features of these mainframe computers, which includes the ability to run the multiple operating systems. Secondly, we discussed about the it can add or swap the system capacity, and also the 2 level of this virtualization, logical partition, and the virtual machines. Thirdly, we discussed about the capability to handle very high amount of input and output operations. Then the fourth point was regarding the ROI, the return on investment, the capability to produce the production based on these mainframes. Then lastly, we discussed the execution speed or execution process of these mainframes. So these are the major 5 features of these mainframes. Then we just discussed the differences between the supercomputer and the mainframes. Firstly, we discussed the differences basically based on their use, and also secondly we discussed about their measurements, how the speed of the processes are measured in terms of these flops and MIPS. So that's regarding the mainframe computer. So now we have another major topic, the types of computer, which is the supercomputer. So we discussed about the personal computers, then the mainframe computers, and now we have the last topic of this category, the types of computers, which is the supercomputer. So we have the third topic of this, the last topic of this types of computers, which is the supercomputer. So what is a supercomputer? We already discussed about the mainframe computers and the personal computers, the different types of personal computers, their uses, and all the especially the different generations of computers. So here we have the last topic of these types of computers, which is the supercomputer. So the last topic that we discussed was the mainframe computer, in which the last point, which was the major differences between the supercomputers and the mainframe computers. In that we discussed about the supercomputers too. So the supercomputers means that it is a computer which has the kind of this specific speed for the calculation, and the major use is for the supercomputers is used for the scientific and also for the engineering problems, to calculate the engineering problems, and which are limited by processing speed and memory size. So these are the just major points regarding the supercomputers that we discussed earlier. So now we have the kind of supercomputers, the major topic from the types of computers in this chapter. So supercomputers, while we focus on the definition of this supercomputer, a supercomputer is a computer that is at the front line of current processing capacity, particularly the speed of calculation, and also it can process the billions of instructions per second, and they are very expensive and are employed for specialized tasks that require the intensive numerical computation such as the stock analysis, weather forecasting, scientific simulations, animated graphics, fluid dynamic calculation, nuclear energy research, then the electric design, and also the analysis of the geological data, which means the kind of this petrochemical prospecting, which is used in this kind of processes. So this is basically the just a definition and introduction to the supercomputers, which means that it can run the problems or the processes in a very advanced manner, which means it has the processing capacity, especially a kind of speed of calculating, and the kind of this calculation, the measurement is a highlight of the supercomputers. Also, we discussed this point in the last topic while we compare the mainframes with the supercomputers, in which the supercomputers use the kind of measurement which is the flops, which means that the floating points or the floating point operations per second. So it is a very I would say a kind of a very good amount of measurement to calculate the processor in a very good manner. So it is the major highlight of these supercomputers, and beside that, these supercomputers can perform this kind of billions of instructions per second, and all these features, all these advancements, these supercomputers are very expensive. So it is a very important point that we should focus on, and also are employed for the specialized tasks, exclusively for these kind of tasks. For generally we can say that for the scientific and for the engineering problem solving methods, and especially for the stock analysis, weather forecasting, it is a very important feature. Then the scientific simulations, animated graphics, fluid dynamic calculation, all these things, all these processes can be handled by the supercomputers. So basically the supercomputers is a very advanced form of while we just check there is some kind of drawbacks which means that it has a limited amount of memory level, limited amount of this some kind of calculations, but we have a clear edge over the other forms of computers while we focus on the supercomputers. So it is a very important point. And then perhaps the best known supercomputer manufacturers is Cray Research. So the Cray Research, some of these traditional companies which produce supercomputers are Cray, IBM and Hewlett Packard. So Hewlett Packard, all these companies, they produce a specific kind of typical supercomputers. So we already discussed the Cray model and also the IBM model while we discussed the topic, the generations of computers. So we have all these companies in here too, and also some other companies which like the Hewlett Packard companies, and IBM, also the advanced form of these supercomputers by IBM, Cray. So these kind of these models are the examples for these supercomputers. Now in the constantly changing of the world of computing, the term supercomputer itself is rather fluid, and today's supercomputer tends to become tomorrow's ordinary computer. So this is just a very important fact regarding the all the kind of this computer, in which the kind of this changing world or in the advancing forms of these computers, in the world of computing, the term supercomputer itself is rather fluid, and today's supercomputer tends to become the tomorrow's ordinary computer. So what the change or the with the advancement of these technologies, there is a very great change in the name too. So once a supercomputer becomes a ordinary computer in next following days, which means that in following years. So this is basically a difference or the very positive side of this advancement of the world of computers, and also a negative side of these supercomputers in which they became outdated. So this is exclusively for all the kind of these devices, the advancement of these devices. Basically, we all know that the advancement in every sector, for example, for the mobile devices, we have the 4G and upcoming 5G. All this means that it is the advanced forms of these communicating communicating devices, and also the smartphones by feature and laptops by feature is advancing day by day. So it means that the older forms became outdated. So it is also applicable for all the kind of these computers. And as of July 2009, the Cray Jaguar is the fastest supercomputer in the world. So it is very important. As of now, 2009, July 2009, in the textbook it is clearly given that the Cray Jaguar, so it is the fastest supercomputer in the world, and we have another forms of supercomputers in the recent world, in which all the companies, exclusively IBM, all the Cray, all the Hewlett Packard, all these companies produce a kind of newer version or advanced forms of these supercomputers in a very systematic manner. So here we have the Cray Jaguar, which is regarded as a fastest supercomputer in the world in 2009. So latest model of this supercomputers is which is manufactured by a kind of this a Japanese company. Exclusively the location is Kobe, Japan, and the maximum rate of this the kind of this measurement, which is the flops, is just advanced into T flops, and it is very high level for this kind of latest model of supercomputers. And in 2020, in this year, we have the latest model of supercomputer, which is known by the name Fujitsu Fugaku. It is a Japanese name, and we have in 2018 it was the IBM Summit, and then in also in the same year IBM, Nvidia, Melanco, Stella, all these companies produced the kind of supercomputers. Then in 2016 the Sunway Talholet, it is also from the China model company. Then the Dell Frontiera in 2019 also introduced the kind of supercomputers. So also the Lenovo in 2018 also introduced a forms of this supercomputer, which is the Lenovo Super MU-CNG. So it is a kind of supercomputers advanced by Lenovo company. So basically the most latest form of this supercomputers is by the Fujitsu Fugaku in 2020, this year, by a Japanese company, Fujitsu Computers. So this is regarding the basics or the advancement of this development in the kind of these supercomputers, and the change in the application or the stages of the supercomputers, which is basically the application we can just short out into just three for the last 3 decades. In 2000s, from the 2000 to 2010, it was based on the 3D nuclear test simulations, and also from 2010 onwards it was advanced into molecular dynamic simulation, and now in 2020 we have the scientific research for the outbreak of prevention or the electrochemical reaction research. So this is the basic application of the supercomputers in the in the today the latest level. So this is regarding some additional information regarding the supercomputers. So the supercomputers using the custom CPUs and also traditionally gained their speed over the conventional computers through the use of innovative designs that allow them to perform many tasks in parallel, and also they tend to be specialized for certain types of computation, and usually the numerical calculation and perform the poorly at more general computing task. So these supercomputers have the capacity or the capability to perform all the innovative advancement or the advancement processes, and also the design was also regarded as a use of this kind of innovative designs for the supercomputers, which allow them to perform many tasks in parallel. So it is another advancement of these supercomputers. Then their memory hierarchy is very carefully designed to ensure the processor is kept fed with data and instruction at all the times. And also, in fact, much of these performance differences between the slower computers and the supercomputers is due to the memory hierarchy. So there is also another differences between exclusively the memory capacity, the level of the memory for the supercomputers, and also the input and output systems tend to be designed to support higher bandwidth, and also with the latency less of an issue, because supercomputers are not used for transaction processing. So also we have the advancement in this category too, which means the input-output systems. So the supercomputers have some kind of advancement in their designs, with which help the innovative designs helps to run the processor perform the many tasks in parallel, and also they have the kind of this specific type of computation, which means that they have the kind of the advanced form of memory level. Then the storage capacity also increased, and also their input-output system also support the higher bandwidth. So these are the basic information regarding the supercomputers that we should focus on. So we just discussed the topic supercomputers, the definition of supercomputers, some features of supercomputers, which includes basically for the scientific and engineering problem solving methods, and also the advancement in the supercomputers, the latest model, and also the most commonly accepted, the fastest computer in 2009 was the Cray Jaguar, and the basic companies which produce the kind of supercomputers, which includes the Cray, IBM, Hewlett Packard, and also latest we have more companies from this kind of computer companies which introduced the supercomputers. So that's regarding the supercomputers. So today we discussed the topics, the mainframe computers and also the supercomputers. So that this is the basics of the major topics that we should focus on while studying the topic, the types of computers. So we just completed the topic, the types of computers. Firstly, we discussed the personal computer, and the earlier classes we discussed about the other forms of personal computers, then the mainframe computer, and also today we discussed basically the mainframe and the supercomputer. So that's regarding the topic, the major second topic from the first module of the informatics, which is the types of computers. So that's regarding the topic, the types of computers. So we discussed the other topics in the following classes. So that's for today. Thank you.